Hello! Another episode of Bob. I know it's been dragging on a bit, but axles. Sorry. Front axle this time, so I'm building up the front axle. And then we'll get off the actual business. We'll get back onto chassis work again. And then when the chassis is done, then I can start working on the bulkhead and stuff, which is what you've really come here to see, isn't it? Sorry, axles. It happens. Anyway, if you like this kind of stuff, hit the old subscribe button. Down there somewhere if you're watching on your computer. It really does help the channel, etc, etc, etc. So I'm led to believe anyway. Yeah, if you like the content, give me a thumbs up. If you don't like it, and you feel you need to give me a thumbs down, happens. If you want to tell me why, I might change. You never know. Anyway, this is it. So if you want to get in touch with me for any reason, then Church House Classics, it's all one word, at gmail.com. There's also a linky underneath the stag at the top of the channel homepage. It goes straight to my homepage, and there's a contact me thing on there as well. If you fancy supporting the channel or buying me a beer, then there's a PayPal me link in the description down below this video. No obligation. But any donations are gratefully received, and I will respond to each and every one of you. Anyway, enjoy the video. Right, there's a new seal in there. Okay, drive shaft goes through that. We need the drive shaft, so let's go and get that. This is the front drive shaft, so it shouldn't be too much of a problem. Drive shaft. Actually, no, swivel ball goes on first. What are you talking about, Richard? Silly ass. Right, swivel ball first, drive shaft second. Which is good, because I've just got my hands all particularly messy. Lifting that out of there. So all I really want to do, I guess now, is swivel ball needs to go on. One thing you don't want to forget, by the way, folks, you really don't want to forget it, is the sweep seal, because it can only go on that way round. So you put the sweep seal onto the ball, and then the other thing you don't want to forget is the sweep seal retainer, which will only fit on one way round. So work out which way round it needs to go and fit it that way. It goes on that way round, because otherwise what will end up happening is you'll end up swearing, because you have to take the whole bloody thing apart again after you set your swivel preload, and it's not a joyous occasion. So I can see there the bolt holes all line up there nicely. All looks good. So I'll just put that onto the swivel housing like that. And we're back. Right, okay. A bit of glove. I've run out of Hylamar, blue Hylamar, which is a pain in the bollocks. I thought I had another can of the stuff. I haven't. So I'm using, it's a Hylamar product, but it's 100 series silicon sealant. I prefer using the blue Hylamar. It makes less of a mess, I think. But this stuff's all right. It's okay. And really, all it's a case of doing, now I've cleaned all the gasket faces up. Oh, I've got two gaskets here now, look at that. Put one up there. Just a case of squirty, squirty, squirt. And I just smear it around, liberally around the face. I mean, the gasket should seal. It really shouldn't need this shit, but we're talking about, you know, 50-year-old Land Rover axle components, which weren't ever really oil tight in the first place. So we can't really expect them to be perfect now, can we? Well, I guess we could, but you're wasting your time. And a bit more gloopy McGloop around here. I'm not going to go berserk with it, but I just want to smear it around the inner face here so it will seal against the gasket. And then we shouldn't get any leaks between the axle casing and the swivel housing. Right, so that's done. Take Mr. Glove off. Mr. Gravity's back with us with a vengeance. I bought myself some new bolts. These are high tensile bolts of the correct grade. they're all going to have a new split washer. And put one of those split washers is a bit shit. That's not a good start either. 6 of them. Newer cars you'll need 7. That's the 7th. 6th, sorry. Bit of Loctite. Balance that there. And then all we'll do is just Loctite onto that. We wanted this small hole up the top. We'll position the bolt through. Bum, bum, bum. Probably could have cleaned the paint out of the bloody bolt holes as well, but never mind. Alright, we'll position that into the thread, and that should be going in there. So we made a gnarls of it. We'll try that again. Push the bolt right through this time. Right, the bolt's through. Now let's position the bolt into the thread. Right, the bolt is in the thread. Now there's a lip on the inside of the swivel ball that locates into the end of the axle. So that's now in place. Now, what you will find is that the sweep seal and the seal retainer are a right pain in the arse because they just keep flopping around and getting in the way. You just have to deal with it. If you remind yourself that they're a right pain in the arse, then probably you won't forget to have put them on by this point. Because if you haven't put them on by this point, you can end up taking it all off again. And then you'll be cursing. You'll be getting to the end of it all thinking, right, done that. Take the whole fucking thing apart. Then you'll be cursing. Right, now spanners. Got a oopsie. Lock my 2 spanners together. That's a bit silly. Right, okay. Ratchet packed up on the Halford spanner there for a second. They sometimes go a bit tight. You just tap them on the floor and they fix themselves. Self-healing. Oh, I've just noticed something. So on the bottom of this hub, there should be a angled bracket to support the brake back plate. It's missing the tab on this one, which is a pain. Never mind. When it's all together, I shall rotate the axle, undo the bottom swivel bolts and put that on. It's not really a huge issue. We'll be able to work around it. It's just a pain in the bollocks. That's another thing I need to remember to do. We'll put these in. Now, you need to torque these up. And one of the challenges when it comes to torquing these up is that you can't get a torque wrench in here. So you might have to be a bit ingenious, and I'll show you how ingenious I can be in 1 minute when I've got this thing and I've got all of the bolts done up to a rough torque. So torque amongst yourselves. Time for a toilet break. You can go and grab one if you want to put the kettle on. Go and do that. Shouty swallows back. Oopsie. Flew off in the end. Hours of fun. It's nice to actually. This isn't rust, by the way. This is copperies. We'll get a good old jet wash off at some point. It's going to get quite dusty. I think it's going to be a while before this car's finished. So just putting a really good coating of paint on it is going to help. And then the pressure washer should be able to just clear any dust and shite off when I build the car up. Right, now, these bolts, one more to go, need to go up to 50 foot-pounds. As you can see, you can't get a torque wrench in there. putting the last bit of thread lock on the last bolt, which is just going in now. So the way I do it, I mean 50 foot-pounds is 50 pounds of force exerted at 1 foot. And so the easy way to do that is on this. If you put the ring end of a spanner over the top of that, I don't know if you can see that or not. Can you see that? No, you can't. Just tilt the camera up a little bit. So if you put the ring end of a spanner over the top of that, that's more or less a foot from that centre pivot up to there. Then get yourself a spring balance. With me still? Put the spring balance over the spanner and then pull until you get 50 pounds. And because you've got a nice ratchet on there, 40. Oopsie. Okay, it might be a bit of abuse for my Alford spanner here, but it's only 50 pounds. Right, 45. Give it another tug, because the spring balance just takes a little while to catch up. 48 and 50. And that's how you do those. Get it? Right, bring you back to me now. So next what we'll do is we'll put the swivel housing on after I've untangled those two spanners. Put the swivel housing on, and there's a tiny bit of rust on that, but it's outside the sweep seal. Sweep seal goes like that, so it's outside the sweep seal, and I don't know why, but yeah, tiny bit of rust up there. I'm happy with it though, it will do. Certainly not scrap. So we retained the original top bearing in this, that's all good order. We'll put the swivel housing on and then we'll position the pin in the top. Oops, there's some paint on it. That's not going to help it, is it? Right, I'll need to get the paint off there. Get the paint off that, I'll be back to you. Get that done. Let's just pop that in there. That should slip down. That's going to hold the swivel onto the housings. Turn it around. I still need to do the preload on this, and I'm going to do that as part of a separate how the factory do this video, because I'm getting more and more inquiries that come in asking me doing specific jobs, and I know I did it on Alan, but you know, diverting someone to watch through 18 hours of back-to-back footage, I know it's a good idea. I mean, I love doing it, but still people get unnecessarily pissed off about it all. Right, now one thing I will do at this point is just double check this sweep seal does fit into the housing. It's something I didn't do beforehand rather stupidly. Yes, it does, it fits in. And the other thing I wanted to check was that this is definitely on the right way round, which, where's the cutout? There's the cutout. It definitely is. So yes and yes, success and success. Right, okay, before we put the outer hub on, the stub axle, we need to take this off, take these bolts out. These, I guess I could also use these high tensile bolts for, but these ones are actually in fairly good order, so they're going to go back on. You can reuse bolts as long as the... So generally what I look for when I'm doing a bolt is the quality of the thread, firstly. Look at this example down here, it's a very fine example, it's a high tensile bolt, so you're unlikely to strip the bastard thing. The head is in good order, none of the flats are rounded off. I mean, none of these are. All these flats are in fairly good order. The threads are all in good order. There's no rounding, there's no burring. Use them again. No reason why not. Now, there's no lock washers underneath the stub axle because you've got this dirt shield thing which just keeps the dirt and crap off the keeps the dirt and crap off the hub bearing. There you go. I knew. However, there's a bit of excess paint on this, Richard. Nothing like turning up for a job prepared, is there? Just using a razor blade just to take some of this excess paint off. Because when I go at it with a paintbrush later on, when it's all assembled, just prior to going back on the car, to be honest, I'll give these just a little light coating. All I'm doing is just taking a couple of run marks out. I'm not even going back to bare metal. What I normally do when I do these is I paint the back first. I don't know why this one's run quite so much on the front face. Maybe I didn't paint this one from the back first. A lot of this stuff I painted weeks ago. This is that Rust-Oleum paint. Got it from rust.co.uk. You can get it all over the place, but I think it's an American paint system. It's a little bit like the Hammerite used to be like. So I don't know what you found, folks, but I'm not a big fan of current Hammerite. I don't think it lasts very long. Right, I've already undone the drain plug and the fill plug, so they're all loose on this. The whole thing is loose. Caliper bolts are in there. Right, stub axle. Yeah, there's paint on this face here as well, so we need to get that off. There's no pressure on this at all. I could have gone around with a bit of wet dry paper, but what's the point of that? Okay, we've got a bit of rust on the back here as well. It's just surface rust, I think. It is just surface rust. Now, stub axles from the back and the front, they are different. So bear that in mind. There's me oily cloth there. The hubs on the front have this little flange for now and this brass bush. And the reason for that, bush for now, is flange and bush in one sentence. Sorry, folks. The reason for that is that the drive shaft seats up against the inside of this. Drive shaft of the CV joint. So let us, first of all, just clean up this back face on here. There's not too much on there. And again, similar sort of trick with the gasket sealant and the loop. That can go on any way up it wants to go, but what I tend to do, because you've got this key tab here, it's nice if you can see the bloody thing when you're working on a car, so I tend to put that pointing upwards in some direction. Just makes life just that tiny bit easier. Right, before we put that on, and we mustn't forget to put the dust seal on, we'll put the drive shaft in. It goes straight through the middle, boom, and all the way in until it engages with the differential. There it goes. He's in. Should go right in there. And the second thing we need to do is get to the CV joints. Brand spanking new CV joints. Made in China. You can't seem to get the original Hardy's pricey versions of these. They're non-existent. Check that the thing's been hardened, which it has. You see the staining that goes around. Check that it moves, which it does. Right, the next thing we need to do really is just pack this thing out with grease. So they even supply it. Look at that, they even supply it with CV joint grease. Now this is something that was not in the CV joints that came out of this car. So God knows what that was. God knows what they were. Tell you one thing, folks. You really would not believe that it's nearly August. Would you? I mean, look at that. And we're fairly high up here, sort of on the edge of Exmoor, but for fuck's sake. 20 to 5. Bloody. shouldn't be surprised really, should I? Right, Mr. CV joint. I'll tell you what we will do, just before we go absolutely berserk on this, we'll make sure Mr. CV joint goes on to Mr. Drive Shaft. He does. And we'll make sure Mr. CV joint fits Mr. Drive Plates. I'll just pick it up from the bench. Mr. Drive Plate also fits Mr. CV joint, so happy enough with that. Right, now let's lube the fuck out of it. It's quite a heavy duty grease, this one. I guess it sticks like shit to a blanket because these hubs may well end up just with an EP oil in them rather than like a one-stop lube or anything like that. And so because of that, it's just makes sense to load it on. Right. Right, and then that can go back onto the drive shaft. We'll just need to, what I'll do is I'll attach it now to the stub axle, which has rolled away. Here he is. We should be able to now swivel that around a little bit. That's all good. Happy with that. And then Mr. Gasket next. So we put the stub axle on. Again, I don't know if I have cleaned up these faces or not. So it's just, you can never check too many times, you see. Pointless really just attaching gaskets where there's paint all over the face of it. Tiny little skim across the edge there. But nothing serious. It's all going on the floor. Right, that's that. Next, gasket. Stub axle gasket. Now, these ones, made in England, I found they're actually a bit of a bastard to fit on. They're not quite big enough, which is a bit of an arse really. So they tend to stick up at a funny angle, but once they're all bolted into place, there's no real issue with that. So it does go on, which is good news. Right, so let's put some of my jointing compound on. That'll do it. When you position him on, you'll need to make sure that the nose of the CV joint actually goes into the end of the stub axle. Otherwise, it won't click on like that. Okie dokie. Oops, come out like a turd there. Right, now let's deglove. I'm going to thread lock these. Let's just have a quick tear of this shit. So I don't want to stand on these fuckers later on. Because you know what happens. A wee bit of thread lock. There's a bit of thread lock. A wee bit of thread lock never hurts. I've got tab washers. Bloody great lump of wire on there. Why is there a bloody great lump of wire on there? Oh, it's come out of the magnetic tray. Just visual checking everything before it all goes together. Right, that goes there. That goes there. We've got the joint pointing upwards. We've got the bolt going in. There it goes. We do these ones up with a socket. Makes life a lot easier. It's just a case now of going around doing each of these. Then next we'll do the swivel preload, and then I can assemble the hub seal, sorry, the sweep seal and the sweep seal retainer onto the back of the swivel housing. I haven't put any fluids in anything yet, so I just make a mental note when I'm doing a job like this, there's no fluids in anything, so I know that, you know, there's no point me starting this thing up or getting it going with no fluids. Otherwise, if I start putting swivel housing oil in, I might forget, oh shit, well I haven't done the diff. I haven't done the diff yet because I need to take the front seal out and check the front seal. Well, I'll just replace it, to be honest. I've got a new one. So it's pointless to keep hold of the old one. And then you know how it goes. I can go back on there again. Boom, boom. Boom. Right, what size are we? 1/2 inch or 9/16? 9/16, which is there. Just nip them up, then I'll torque them. CV joints in, drive shafts in, all nicely sealed. Arf, arf. Just working radially around it just so it pulls it in nice and tight. It's wobbly at the moment because there's no preload on it, so there's no movement at all. There's no security on the swivel pin bearings. I don't think these go up very tight, these ones. Where's the book? Booky muck book face. Stub axle to swivel pin housing. 60 to 70, 44 to 52. Right, going to the old torque wrench. And then I will get on with doing the preload. Okay, that's it for today. Achieved what I wanted to do, which is the diff back in, both swivel preload set up, both swivel housings and everything, the hub stub axles and everything installed, radius arms installed. Once I've sorted out the hubs, which are up there needing painting, well, they're actually needing blasting back first of all, then I can get this axle in much the same state as the back axle is. So, yeah, good FA. There he is. Front axle, largest together. So I used the new discs that I had here. They've never been skimmed. That big pile of back discs there have all been skimmed and they're below the minimum thickness. These were like new. Just a very, very light coating of surface rust on them. I'll spray a bit of WD-40 on them just to keep them looking clean. Bunged the old steering track rod back on. So that's just back on, just so I don't have to kind of wobble the wheels from one direction to the other. I just noticed this wheel that come off him is a much, much later one. So that one we're going back on. Nor will that tyre. Not sure I'm going to stand too close to that. It's like the Grand Canyon. Right. Bit of a clear up now, I think. Back axle's over there. Front axle's over here. They're in the right sort of place. But now you see it's fairly easy for me to just walk that to the back of the barn. Stand him up, rope them together. Howard's Mini tomorrow. Oh yes.